Hello friends, and thanks for stopping by Bigfoot Lake tonight. Always a pleasure to have your company. Tonight we've got a couple Bigfoot encounters to share, both very interesting encounters to say the least. But before we get into tonight's encounters, I wanted to ask you guys a favor. We have some special guests who will likely be joining us here on Bigfoot Lake in the near future on some future videos, and it would sure be nice to have some of your encounters to share with them. It's always nice to have some good encounters or good stories to tell guests as they join us here around the campfire here at Bigfoot Lake. So if you have an encounter that you would like to share, doesn't have to be a long encounter, just your story. What happened? Yes, reach out to us. It would be greatly appreciated. You see the email up on the screen there, so reach out to us and we'll put something together and present your story. So we want to thank you for that. And with that being said, I hope you have a favorite stump picked out. So if you found your favorite, pull it on up. Pull up a stump and let's get comfortable as we dive into these two Bigfoot encounters.
This was in Lumpkin County, Georgia. It says the side road may have been Dockery Lake Road, or it may have been FS 654, which sits east of Highway 60 north towards the lake and camping area. I want to tell you about an incident that happened a few months ago in fall 2006. So this is an older story. My girlfriend and I were parked and had some pretty heavy conversations. To break free of the tension, I suggested we get out of the car and walk. I set the brakes on the truck and we got out. Locked up and headed down the road, hand in hand, enjoying the crisp night air. She chattered on non-stop. There was a moon out, although I couldn't see it yet, and we walked by flashlight. Pretty soon I smelled a skunk. It got stronger and stronger, but the smell changed to a rotten smell. Maybe garbage that is hot and moldy mixed with a skunk spray. I thought maybe a camper had left camp trash out or something. We walked on a ways, not wanting to meet up with the skunk, and I suggested we turn back to the truck because we had gone around two bends in the road and we couldn't see back to the truck now. You know that funny feeling you get when comfort and safety suddenly seem important? So we did about face and headed towards the truck. That is when we saw this figure. Man, it was right out there in the middle of the road at a distance of the furthest beam of the flashlight. Talk about a David and Goliath sight. It was just standing there looking at us. I know you won't believe me if I tell you how tall this sucker was, but I am 6'3" tall, played basketball with guys much bigger than me. I know this thing was at least 8, maybe 9 feet tall, and must have weighed at least 500 pounds. It was just massive across the chest and biceps, standing there in the middle of the road. It's true. The thing swayed back and forth like the head of an owl when it's looking at something. You know how an owl moves its head side to side like that, back and forth? This thing did that, moved that way. And in the flashlight beam it had reflective eyes like dogs have. It never moved towards us. It stayed in place, swaying. It took a minute to register, and I stared back, not believing my eyes. And my girl freaked into scaring, yelling, which really unnerved me, especially in the dark like that. Her scream also unnerved this Goliath, for he or it turned and stepped off the side of the road, down over the embankment and out of flashlight range. One step, maybe two, and it was gone, just like that. Mind you now, to get to the truck, we had to walk past that place in the road where this monster stood. How spooky is that? I was ready to cut and run the rest of the way to the truck, but my girl was terrified and couldn't make her legs move. She was shaking and hanging on to me, which didn't help me, brave man that I am. So she gathered herself, hanging onto me around the waist, and I scanned all the area around us up ahead with the flashlight and told her to run fast. But I was literally dragging her with one hand and showing the light with the other. The way back seemed to take a long time, but it was only seconds because we hauled. Got to the truck, and dude, I couldn't make my keys work. I fumbled around for another few minutes, trying to accomplish something between her screaming instructions and my back to the road, which I didn't like. Do you know how hard it is to unlock a car door with one hand on a flashlight and a woman hanging around your neck and keys in the other hand? Picture it. We didn't see the creature again, but we didn't stick around either. We moved like it was after us. I am telling you, these things are giants with a capital G, and the sight alone is hard to figure. There is nothing in my life that prepared me for such a sight. It's still surreal to think about, and it doesn't help when people laugh and think I'm nuts. I know what we saw. We don't expect anyone would believe this. Nobody hereabouts would, but we thought it ought to be reported. Our next story actually comes from Flynn Springs in San Diego County in California. And this goes all the way back to 1951. So this story's got some age to it. So let's begin with our story. It says, I was very young, so my story was never taken as anything more than a child's tall tale. I lived in a small house in an area of mostly chicken farms and large groves of citrus trees. It was in the county of San Diego, California. There was nothing but open land and rocky foothills. The hills were rugged, with thick brush and scrub oaks. The town was called Flynn Springs, and the town consisted of one small county store, all the way back in 1951. Where this happened was a chicken ranch. The few houses around were all on at least an acre of ground. The chicken ranch was right across from our house, a dirt road separating the two. Beyond the chicken ranch was a sage-covered field, and then next came a large citrus grove, mainly lemons. There were pomegranate trees planted on the edge of the lemon grove. Beehives were placed in the grove and in the sage field next to it. Beyond the grove were rocky hills that stretched to the Cuyamaca Mountains and then to Mount Laguna. There were no houses that I knew of between the grove and the mountains, with the exception of the Viejas Indian Reservation outside the community, Alpine, on the south side of what's now known as Old Highway 80. It runs parallel to the Interstate Highway 8 that runs east-west. It was 1951, and I spent the day watching George, the egg rancher guy, butcher a cow. There was a lot of blood, and they buried the hide, the head, the hoofs, and intestines in a shallow hole they had dug under a large oak. That night, we were playing hide-and-go-seek, and I hid in a brush pile just south, a few feet from where they had dug that pit. I laid there, and I heard footsteps, and it sounded like a person wearing flip-flops. I'll never forget that sound. I lay very still, thinking it was one of the hide-and-go-seek players looking for me. I heard a low groan and some sniffing-like sounds, and the steps came closer to the brush pile. I was starting to get scared, but afraid to try and run. Now, I didn't smell anything like reported at other sightings, but I was lying in a pile of decaying brush weeds and grass, and it was a smelly chicken ranch anyway. I pushed myself deeper into the brush pile, trying to get away from whatever seemed to be stalking me. This wasn't the brightest move because it gave my position away. A kind of leap, and then I saw the face. I'll never forget. 3 feet in front of me in the opening of the cave I had made in the brush pile, a face appeared. It was large with dark brown reddish hair, a broad flat nose. It had light brown skin tone and jet black eyes, but looked gold when the moonlight hit them. There was little or no hair on the upper part of the face, and more human looking than ape. Its mouth was open a bit, and I could see his yellow teeth. 2 of the front ones were larger than the others, and 2 were larger than human eye teeth, but smaller than a dog's or bear's canine teeth, and not as pointed. His expression was almost one of confusion. I wanted to scream but couldn't, as it looked at me. He lifted some of the brush with one massive hand to get a better look. It seemed like forever, and I remember being petrified. I heard my brother calling and my dog Rayona barking. It gently set the brush back into place and stood up. I could see its body now. He was massive, covered with long strands of dark reddish-brown hair, and it had huge long arms. I have no idea of its height, but he was much taller than my 6-foot father. After a minute, it bends back down and stares at me again, but makes no move to hurt me or try to pull me out of my hiding place. He simply takes a deep sighing groan and left. I heard 3 or 4 loud thumps heading off towards the grove of the citrus. I crawled out from my hiding place as soon as I thought it was safe and ran screaming home. Neither my brother nor none of his friends could calm me down. My mom came running, and I blurted out my story, but no one would believe me. My mother accused my brother and the neighbor boys of telling me scary stories. I was hysterical, and it took days for me to calm down, and to this day, I still see that face. It was a full moon night, and it was starlit. I saw the beast plainly, and he walked on 2 feet. I don't know if he was there because of the buried cow parts, or he was just curious of this little guy, me, playing. He made no attempt to dig up the butchered remains, nor made any attempt to harm me. There were several fruit trees spread out on the ranch and the homes nearby. Apricot, plum, and pomegranate trees were everywhere, and I think that's what he came out of the hills for. I stopped playing hide-and-go-seek at night and never went out to that brush pile again. I thought I saw him 2 other times in between the chicken coops. It was a large form looking in the cages and eating the grain or looking for eggs. I never mentioned it again to anyone, but I thought you might want to decide if I dreamed it or not. If it was a dream, it stayed with me for 57 years, and it's just as real today as it was in the summer of 1951. What an amazing encounter.
Well, friends, what did you think of tonight's encounters? 2 different encounters. I found them both fascinating. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, and if you enjoy the encounters, take a moment and hit that thumbs up button. One of our subscribers mentioned in the last video that they had given the video 2 stumps up, and I thought that was quite phenomenal. I loved that. So if you tonight did indeed enjoy the encounters, give it a big stump up. hit that button. It helps us out a lot, and leave a comment. That helps the channel more than you could know. So appreciate any thoughts you share, and I'm so glad you could join us here tonight. I think with that, we're going to put out the fire, and we're going to get ready and close up shop and probably head to bed soon. So appreciate your company as always. Thanks for being here. Hope you all have a great night, and as always, we'll see you on the next.